Hey there, it is Faith Talk today. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
Hey, what a pleasure to talk with Dr. Charles Hodges Jr. He's going to talk about the second edition of the book, The Christian Counselor's Medical Desk Reference. Doc, how are you?
I'm doing fine. It's a great day, and I'm glad to be here. Thanks for asking me.
Hey, I love this because this particular guide really helps counselors as they deal with folks. They understand medical conditions, which is really cool because today, as we talk to folks, Dan gets to counsel folks. I'm an associate pastor of a church, so counseling is a part of our lives, and has been for some time. And you've put out this guide, which is really cool. This book on how we can help folks that have disorders like OCD, PTSD, Alzheimer's, bipolar disorder, clinical depression, and on. So first of all, thank you very much for putting this together. Let's talk about it. The second edition. Why did you put this out? It's almost a no-brainer, right, for me to ask that question, but why did you put this out for us?
Well, the first edition was written by Dr. Robert Smith and published in the year 2000. Dr. Smith was one of the individuals who was responsible for starting the Faith Biblical Counseling Ministry and was very instrumental across the country in the biblical counseling movement. And many people had asked him to put pen to paper and give an account of his view of the interaction between medicine and counseling, because there are many medical issues that impact people who come to counseling, and sometimes is the cause for their coming to counseling. So Doc did that. As time went forward, though, the information the medical information in the book gradually began to be dated. We always say that most medical information is almost out of date by the time the ink dries on a medical textbook.
Yeah, sure.
And so Doc, about 3 or 4 years ago, started asking me to be the editor of the next edition of the book. And I agreed because he was my mentor and friend. But I did say, as we talked to the publishers, New Growth Press, that I didn't really think a book of this nature could be written by one person. The biblical counseling issues, I think, could be handled by one person, but the medical issues couldn't. And so what I set out to do was recruit people from various different specialties who would look at other problems and give a concise account of what medicine said about the problem, then give a also concise response of what biblical counseling ought to be doing for individuals who come to counseling with those problems. And I recruited another 9 physicians. There were 10 of us doctors and 2 registered nurses who were in biblical counseling. The former head of the School of Pharmacy at a local university, and then 1 social worker who was very instrumental in starting the ministry that I'm a part of here, Vision of Hope. And together, all those individuals wrote 1 to 2, maybe 3 chapters apiece. I wrote 6, and then I helped edit all the rest. And out of that came, I think, a very useful resource that helps folks who are counseling and have individuals who come with the question that Doc said he got most often, and it was, Dr. Smith, I have a counselee, he has X, whatever X is. And he says that's the reason why he's doing what he's doing, and most likely then also says that's the reason why he doesn't think he can change what he's doing. What do you say about that? And Doc Smith wrote the book from that viewpoint, and we did as well, trying to look at things like, as you said, OCD, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, autism, ADHD. How should biblical counseling respond to these various different kinds of problems? And that's why we wrote it. We wanted to update it.
And it sounds like this is just a crucial book, because it seems sometimes there is a pull between the medical community and the biblical counseling community. And it's like, some people say, oh, you can fix everything with a few scriptures, and medicine says, no, only medicine can do it. But when you bring these two together, I think it's much more whole for the person that's being counseled, right?
Yes, I've lived in the space between those two questions. Is this totally a medical problem, or is this totally a spiritual problem? And at times I find myself being shot at from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And folks who are convinced that this problem has nothing to do with medicine and we ought to try to fix it biblically, and then folks who think that problems are only medical.
Mm-hmm.
The spectrum can be seen in Scripture. I think anxiety is a really good example. Probably 25% of the people in the United States today are taking some kind of medicine that's aimed at helping either depression or anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, is anxiety worry? Does the Bible speak of it? If the Bible speaks of it, isn't the Bible sufficient to deal with it? And I like to point out to individuals in the biblical counseling movement and the students that I teach that yes, the Bible does talk about worry, but it's very specific when it talks about worry. It tells you what worry is sinful. And it's usually I'm worried over money, or I'm worried over position in life, or I'm worried over my health. And Jesus tells us not to worry about those things. So
Mm-hmm.
therefore, there is a certain spiritual approach to it. Quite on the other hand, there are folks who have this unease that they feel, in their person, and sometimes it proves out to be hyperthyroidism, or they have a cardiac arrhythmia.
Yeah.
And I had one lady who came to me and said that she spent most of her life being told that her sense of being anxious was a spiritual issue, only eventually to find a physician who figured out she had Parkinson's disease.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Mhm.
And when
Wow.
they figured that out and properly treated it, her worry went away. And so there you have both sides of that kind of issue.
Mm.
We're talking with Dr. Hodges, and the book is the Christian Counselor's Medical Desk Reference. This is the second edition, a really great book. What have you heard so far? I know it's only been out since February 20th. But Doc, what have you heard so far, the response from it?
Well, so far, there are a lot of people who find that it's a very useful tool, and we've been gratified by that. I, I, I try not to spend my time looking at social media because it just sort of sucks you in and takes your life away from you at
Yes, it
times.
does.
But when the book came out, I would go to Amazon and look how it was moving. And for the first week to 10 days, it was the #1 new release in Christian counseling and those kind of categories. It wasn't the #1 book on Amazon, but it was in the category of, counseling and things like that. It was the #1 new release. So the book is moving along quite well. And it's finding a good audience among, I think, both counselors. Counselors will, I think, find this book very useful. But also folks who have individuals who have the problems. There are at least 19 or 20 different medical issues dealt with in the book. That's what we aimed it at. And there are lots of individuals who have family members who struggle with them. And I think they'll find this book useful in that regard as well.
Definitely. I'm gonna order one today, actually.
Yes.
It looks awesome. Real quick, Dr. Hodges, tell us about a little bit about Vision of Hope. I'm curious what that's all about.
Yes, Vision of Hope is a residential counseling facility for women ages 14 and above. And we've been here for about 15 years. I've been the executive director for the last 5. And we counsel, we have folks come here and counsel who struggle with eating disorders and substance abuse and unplanned pregnancies and self-harm and depression and OCD and post-traumatic stress disorder. Just about every DSM label you can think of will end up on our shore here. And folks will come and they stay for anywhere from 18 to 24 months and are initially in a very intensive counseling media, and then gradually we start working them back out into the community in the second 6 months. In the third 6 months, many of them will return to their homes, but continue in counseling, or move out into our community and stay around and continuing counseling, and then eventually graduate. So that's what Vision of Hope does. We're a charitable organization. We were started as a result of a gift that was given by an individual who wanted to see a facility like this built 15 years ago.
Awesome.
And she offered a considerable gift, and our pastor wisely smiled and said that, well, that's fine. If we'd be happy to take that gift and build it, if you would double it, so we'll have some money to operate it after we build it. And that individual did. And so, that gave birth to Vision of Hope.
Wow.
Very
That's
cool.
a smart pastor right there.
Yes, he is.
That's a wise one.
Yes,
Way
he
to go.
is.
Doc Hodges, we're talking about the Christian Counselor's Medical Desk Reference, 2nd edition. As Dan mentioned, he's getting one. I've got to get one as well. Doc, we'd love to talk to you again about this, and also more about Vision of Hope. So if you're up for it, we'll get the powers that be to get us together again. Goodmoodbadmood.com is a great place to go to. Of course, you can get this book on Amazon and wherever you get your books. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Today.